Another Bendy Chapter 5 teaser? You betcha! Hey you prodigies, ProdCharles here. joeydrew Studios has released a new Bendy Chapter 5 teaser, and this one seems to be the most straightforward of them all so far. It was also the one that sent the most shivers down my spine. Let's analyze it in this video and see if we can come up with any theories or predictions around it. The teaser was released on Bendy and the Ink Machine social accounts, and it features an image with the caption, "It's time to meet the boss." Alongside it we can see the usual hashtags that accompany the Chapter 5 teasers, including the one that says #FightYourDemon. Looking closely at the image, we can see the entrance to joeydrew's office. We know this because there is a sign above the door that states so. Alongside the message in the tweet, it seems that this area will be one of the final ones that we get to see in the entire game, meaning that joeydrew may just be the final boss in the game. At the base of the door, we can see some kind of ink splatter spread out over the floor. This gets me wondering what we can expect on the other side of that door. In Chapter 3, entering the demon path immediately leads Henry to an area flooded with ink. The room also had several furnishings made completely from ink, some of which were suspended in the air, attached to cascading inky columns. This teaser may just be hinting that we will see a similar scene in joeydrew's office. Otherwise, Joey might have been transformed into some sort of inky being as part of his rituals, like many of the other boss characters we've come across so far. I am curious to know how large the inside of Joey's office is. The size of the office could very well be the difference between a place where we can exchange dialogue with Joey and a place where we can do battle with him. Judging from the size of Sammy Lawrence's office in the music department and what we experienced there, chances are we will get something similar in Chapter 5 for joeydrew. That is, unless his ego got the better of him. This means that we may possibly expect to find an audio tape with a creepy message from Joey within this room, and this would act as a clue to help us progress through the chapter. The fact that we finally get to see an office for Joey despite it being so deep into the studio reminds me of the topic of his sanctuary. Will we finally get to see Joey's sanctuary as mentioned in Sammy Lawrence's audio log?
Every artistic person needs a sanctuary. joeydrew has his, and I've got mine.
If so, perhaps the teasers we've been exposed to date have been hinting towards a pathway to find it. Looking at the design of this area, it seems very similar to the hallway area that Charlie from the Butcher Gang stands in the Chapter 5 reveal trailer. It is so similar that it has matching tiles and doors and is extremely clean. Much like in the last teaser image we saw with the broken floor, there's not one spot of ink to be found in any of these areas, besides the bottom of the door in this new one. It seems as if all of these areas are closely connected, and perhaps we are being teased the path we need to take to finally get to Joey, especially since his office looks like it's at the end of a hall itself. Then again, perhaps this area where Charlie is will lead to Joey's office, and the area with the broken floor will lead to the ink machine or Joey's sanctuary. Considering that we see ink at the base of Joey's door, perhaps that is the final destination of the ink machine that we've been chasing so far. Another thing to consider with this is the caption used alongside the teaser. It reads, "It's time to meet the boss." The areas may just be leading us to our final boss fight. Considering the tremendous bout we had with Bertram, it gets me wondering how intense a battle with joeydrew would be. Something interesting to note about all of these teasers so far is that there aren't any ink pipes in these specific areas, not even in the area where Allison Angel goes completely haywire on the Lost Ones and the Searchers. This is important because many Bendy fans believed that we would have to backtrack to get to joeydrew, but if we did need to do that, we would surely be traveling to areas where ink pipes would be more prevalent. It also wouldn't make much sense that a boat would be teased that would only really lead Henry to a deeper part of the studio. We also need to consider that we've been following the ink machine down into the depths of the studio. That being said, the possibility of a backtrack may be there in the form of a timed escape after the final battle. As I mentioned in the previous teaser analysis, if there ends up being a Metroid-style escape minigame to finish off the series, it would be an extremely intense and satisfying way to triumph against joeydrew. Even more so when you take into account that Henry was adamant on getting out of the studio in his Chapter 5 teaser audio.
But I promise, I will get out of the studio, if it's the last thing I do.
Perhaps the backtrack would be in the form of getting to the ink machine as soon as possible, and then reversing the mechanism that brought it down so deep. I honestly don't see an easier way to get out of the studio otherwise. Now, with the anticipation that we will finally get to face joeydrew one way or another, it raises the question on whether or not joeydrew is bad. This might seem obvious to you, but there has been a lot of misdirection throughout the game so far. We start off seeing Joey as an old friend of Henry's, meaning he's good, right? The game then quickly takes a turn as we find out there is a group of characters, probably the Lost Ones, who believe that the creator lied to them. With 80% of the game out of the way, we can be pretty confident in saying that Joey is the creator, although there is a slight chance that this message could be referring to the gods that Joey tried to appease. We also hear Joey praising the positives of believing in your dreams. But we quickly find out that he hates these messages that he spreads, and it sounds like he's pretty much trying to brainwash those around him. At the same time, Joey might just be sick and tired of trying to be cheery when his money is being funneled into a studio that is slowly breaking apart, or some kind of other stressor in his life. Which brings me to the hashtag, #FightYourDemon. The message in this hashtag seems to suggest something sinister. Of course, we can take it at face value to mean that we will be fighting the ink demon in the final chapter, but there's also the possibility of other interpretations. A demon could refer to a supernatural being, or a sort of negative memory that may be bothering Henry. A question that many of us have been wondering to date is the matter of why Henry left the studio in the first place. Many have suggested that Henry left the studio as a way to get revenge on Joey for taking more than he gave back. With that, essentially the heart of the studio was removed, and the cartoons were forced into the hands of a team of animators that replaced Henry.
Looks like they knocked out a wall or two after I left. Guess it took a few people to replace me.
If the demon is Ink Bendy, then there may just be tension between them and the other toons, considering that the cartoons would feel betrayed by their creators. I personally like the idea of this theory, but the sheer presence of Boris the Wolf completely debunks it. We learnt in Henry's second audio teaser for Chapter 5 that Boris was a dear friend to him, completely negating the theories we had before that, where Boris may have been Alice Angel's lackey.
Times like this, I wish Boris was still with me. He didn't say much, Boris, but he was a good friend to have.
This all said, Henry's return to the studio was an invite from *joeydrew, meaning that Joey would have led him into the lower depths to make him suffer alongside his old colleagues for leaving them all. Another interpretation of hashtag #FightYourDemon could be Henry fighting back the demon of not being able to save his only friend, Boris the Wolf. The entirety of Chapter 4 existed to give time for Henry to save Boris from Alice Angel. It was a crusade to get back at her and recover his previous comrade. Unfortunately, through a twisted chain of events, the way that Henry had to save Boris was by playing carnival games to find out where he was locked up. As we all know, he was too late. Boris was completely mutated and pitted against Henry by the end of Chapter 4, forcing Henry to destroy him. So, not only was Henry not able to save Boris from Alice due to being forced to play carnival games, he also had to take out his one and only companion. This is so messed up, and probably plagued Henry after being captured in Chapter 5. Then again, #FightYourDemon could be referring to joeydrew in the case that he sacrificed his entire studio for the pursuit of eternal life. This means it would be up to Henry to make Joey aware of his error and reverse the negative consequences, or at least get out of there. That being said, perhaps Henry will discover a secret from Joey that will help him understand how to bring Boris back to life, considering that he knows that the ink beings can be reborn again. All he has to do is find the inky well of voices and use the ink machine, but how he can do it in a way that brings back Boris specifically is still a mystery. If this is the case, then the demon that Henry would have fought was not only not being able to help Boris, but also destroying his friend. The matter of Henry taking out Boris altogether could be foreshadowing something that we learn about Henry and Joey's relationship, where Henry leaving Joey may have caused Joey to take an emotional hit, causing him not to care at all about the relationships that he shared with his remaining co-workers. On the right hand side of the teaser, we can see some papers with handprints stuck up on the wall. These papers are similar to the ones that we see in the reveal trailer, and maybe the prints of the lost ones. Based on these papers being pinned up outside of joeydrew's office and potentially further than that, these papers may be a sort of contract between the lost ones and joeydrew, or the lost ones and the gods, or the lost ones and joeydrew and the gods. On an extreme level, they might just be what guides the lost ones to their inky forms, but they could merely just be an offering made to joeydrew by lesser workers that caused them to transform in the first place. However, some of the papers have different numbers of fingers on their handprints, and I'm not quite sure what to make of it. Some might say that they are the handprints of the cartoons, but the cartoons tend to have 4 fingers rather than 3 or 5 as on these papers. Perhaps they didn't press their hands on the paper hard enough. On the left hand side of the teaser, we can see a little Devil Darlin poster, which may be foreshadowing a future fight with the Ink Demon. On the other hand, it may hint that we will really see a perfect Bendy in Chapter 5. This is something that fans have wanted and wondered about throughout the series to date, and I agree that it would be awesome to finally see a normal Bendy as joeydrew Studios had envisioned him. After all, we've had imperfect Alice Angels and imperfect Butcher Gang members, so why wouldn't their perfect opposites exist? We've already seen it with Alice Angel in Allison Angel, perhaps we can only dream. Chapter 5 is going to be incredibly exciting, and if you'd like to know more about it, tap this playlist or check out these videos which were picked just for you. Prodigies, I hope these videos help to expand on how you think. See ya!